There's a reason that I believe that every man should be toxic, right? See, the reason why I believe in toxicity, right, is because one thing I understand is that oftentimes people have this dichotomy, this good and evil dichotomy. And it's not to say that good and evil are things that exist. They do exist, right? But the issue is this. When people talk about good and evil, there are certain conflations between them, right? And these conflations place things that are evil within things that are good, and things that are good within things that are evil, right? And by doing this, it's like the idea of yin and yang, right? When you do things in this particular way, something that happens is you have to get to a place, like if all you focused on is being good your whole life, then you have to get to a place where sometimes you have to recognize that certain things that you thought were evil weren't actually evil. And when you recognize that those things are natural to you, that they're vital and necessary towards life, towards being able to progress as a full person, when you recognize that thing, sometimes it's going to occur in a time of your life where you haven't had the opportunity to fully process that information yet. So if you're coming from a place of purity, like I say, is this, to the pure, all things are pure, to the defiled, all things are defiled. So if you're a person who's not pure at heart, then no matter how much good you try to do, it's going to be bad. Right? So I often look at these things from a particular perspective of just understanding that in modern civilization's idea of what good and bad is, that a lot of the necessary things that are seen as bad are necessary. They're things that are needed. Like within, masculinity, right? There's toxic masculinity. There's toxic femininity, right? Now, people oftentimes disregard the existence of toxic femininity. Seeing toxic femininity is something that does not exist. They don't even talk about it. But toxic femininity does exist, right? It's the manipulation. Well, manipulation is often toxic femininity, right? An assumed perception of innocence and weaponizing that to accrue a mob mentality within other people to fight your battles. That damsel in distress, or a false damsel in distress, that's toxic femininity, right? And toxic masculinity is often when you are overly aggressive in a way that hurts other people, right? But one thing to think about within toxic masculinity is that there are certain things that would be categorized as toxic masculinity that are actually necessary and vital towards being a man, that are necessary and vital towards being effective and efficient in life. And I think that once we understand this, then we can have a more balanced perspective, a more integrated perspective. That's probably better than balanced, is to say integrated, right? So there's reasons I push these particular concepts, because sometimes people are already in a place where the traits that they need to display to be effective are things that in their mind are already things that they see as wrong. I say, you know what? I'm going to take these things that people view as wrong, and I'm going to show people that stimuli is neutral, and that some of these things are necessary and some of these things are vital, especially right now, right? Especially right now with all the overstimulation that's in this day and age, right? With all of this censorship that's in this day and age, with all this propaganda and manipulation that's in this day and age, a lot of men, we need to understand that certain things that are viewed as wrong are things that are necessary. Stimuli is neutral. And when you understand that stimuli is neutral, you understand, okay, let me have a certain set of morals and standards, values, and boundaries that I have, but there are also certain lines that I am willing to cross, certain lines that I'm not willing to cross. And when you understand what lines you are willing to cross, you understand sometimes in life it's not about playing fair or fair in other people's mind. Sometimes your idea of what it means to play fair puts yourself in a position where you're a sitting duck waiting for someone to take advantage of you, right? You're a sitting duck just waiting for other people to manipulate and take advantage of your kindness, take advantage of your weakness. And I know people want to say kindness isn't weakness, especially men, especially simps. They'll listen to what women say online all the time, and they'll get inundated into that social programming, and then they'll see what women say, okay, I don't want to be that kind of guy, I don't want to be that kind of guy. Most men, we've been there at some point in time. Unless you was, initiated into the sexual shadow world at a young age, then chances are there's certain things that aren't bad, certain things that aren't wrong, certain things that are actually very much enjoyable for both parties that a lot of men, they just don't know about. They haven't been exposed to it. And when we understand that stimuli is neutral, then you look at more so, what is your goal? What are you trying to get out of the situation, right? What is going to be enjoyable for that individual? What's going to be enjoyable for yourself? What are the goals that are sought out to be reached? And then have certain things and have certain tools and strategies that you can do, right? Have certain tools and strategies that you can use, certain things within your tool belt, within your skill set. That's why I talk about a lot of different things that I talk about, right? Like I believe in mansplaining. I'm a mansplainer. Now, I have an informed perspective, because a lot of people get more caught up on the idea of symmetry than polarity. A lot of people get more caught up on the idea of what they think is fair than actually look at things from a perspective of what are the needs involved in a situation, right? So I might get into to mansplaining, right? Which is very vital, because let's say a woman is in a position, right, where all she has is a bunch of psychologically reactant, socially programmed women who are speaking from a perspective that lacks self-awareness of things that they're actually attracted to, things that they actually respect, things that they actually want to be submissive to, things that actually create a certain response and reaction out of them that causes them to have a certain feeling that comes up out of them naturally. Thinking that, causing men to think that you can logic a woman into having a certain way that she wants to behave and feel about you. So sometimes mansplaining is necessary. Most of my coaching sessions probably work like mansplaining. Mansplaining is necessary. Like, let's say it's a matter of I'm having a conversation. Probably most of my clients are women. I definitely have men clients, but most of my clients are probably women. And a lot of the times what happens with my particular clients is we're having a conversation and I'm basically sharing from understanding how they feel, understanding their point of view, and rewording the exact same things that their man told them that was so difficult for them to understand at that point in time, because they just weren't at a place to do it. And then when they hear it, you're like, you know what? He told me that. You know what? He told me that. You know what? He told me that. But because when you're in a place where your cup is low and you're not, receptive to a man's dominance, you're not receptive to his masculinity, you kind of get to a point where you just want to combat what he's saying. Or maybe you already lost respect. Maybe you already lost attraction. Maybe you already lost desire. So you're at a place where you're not really at a place to be receptive to the things that he's telling you. I also talk about victim blaming, right? And why do I say victim blaming? Because I think it's important for people to understand that in this world, you can't just sit around and have an entitled mentality of thinking that you're going to change the world instead of changing yourself, instead of having a more realistic way that you're going to interact with people around you. For a man or a woman, you have to get out of that victim mentality. And sometimes you got to get out of that victim mentality of healing just enough so that you can look at the part that you played and things that went wrong and then say, okay, am I putting myself in scenarios where I'm encouraging the type of behavior that's going to hurt me? Also, another thing is taking that gaslighting, right? What's gaslighting? It's invalidating someone's emotions, right? Invalidating someone's emotions and making them think that they're crazy. Some people really are fucking crazy. Some people really do have a mindset about certain things that causes them to be in the scenarios that they find themselves in. And sometimes somebody has to tell you straight up, like, listen, you're wrong. I know you feel this way about how you feel about things, but at the same time, what you need to understand is this. This is what you need to understand. The way you feel about that's not how you always feel. And if you choose the feeling that you have that puts you in a negative mindset, a negative mental space about your experiences, then you're setting yourself up to be in a place where you have a victim mentality. Sometimes you have to look at the different things that you encounter and say, you know what? I could look at this different. Maybe the point of view that I'm looking at this from is something that's causing me a lot of pain. Sometimes you got to go through exposure therapy. That's a big part of the reason why I do, dom shit. That's a big part of the reason why I only really engage in women in dom sub dynamics. And this is something that's very healing for the women that I deal with, right? Because you can deal with a woman who's been, and this is something I call bigger fish theory, right? Bigger fish theory. When it comes to making a woman comfortable, there's different ways of making a woman comfortable. It kind of works like the 9-7 dichotomy. So one way a man makes a woman comfortable is by being overly emotionally empathetic, sympathetic, and understanding. But another way to make a woman comfortable is to treat with her and interact with her in a way to where she gets to reinterpret, re-experience the same stimuli, but from a perspective of something that she respects and she desires. And then when that pain mixes with that pleasure, she's like, damn, you know what? I really like this. That's something that can heal a woman from trauma that she's experienced. Like if a woman's been in an abusive relationship where maybe a man called her names, maybe a man has beat her, or maybe a man has done a variety of things. Maybe a man's cheated on her, and she just feels so hurt. She feels so distraught about the things that she's experienced. Sometimes as a man, what you can do is say like this: get in a dom sub dynamic with a woman, have multiple women, let her know that there are multiple women that you're dealing with, right? You can get aggressive with her, not in a way to be malicious, but in a way that increases and intensifies the pleasure that she's experiencing, that takes advantage of that submissiveness. Call her names, choke her, smack her, spit in her mouth, thumb in her ass, do a bunch of nasty shit, right? And when you do those type of things with a woman who's receptive to that, and then you break it down to her and she's like, you know what? I like that with you, but I didn't like that with everybody. You know, when my ex tried to do this, I didn't like that. That hurt me, and I felt like he was being abusive. And then I break it down a step further, and I'm like, well, check this out. Me and your ex probably not all that different. It's just the way that you two interacted with each other put you into a mind state where you felt entitled to him being emotionally empathetic, sympathetic, and understanding because of how he led. It put you into a scenario to where you felt like the things that he was saying, the things that he was doing were things that hurt you because you wanted softness from him. You wanted gentleness from him, right? But with me, that's not what you want me for. So because that's not what you want me for, when you get this dominance from me, it's something that turns you on more than anything that nigga ever did for you, right? Now check this out. You probably have a capacity to feel that way about him. And then I also say, listen, you see how sexually receptive you are to me? You see how you damn near probably never turn me down for sex? You see how whatever I want to do, wherever I want to do it, however I want to do it, whatever I tell you to do, you down for it? You see how you enjoy that? That's what your nigga, he liked that. He desired that. And he wanted that from you. And because he was too emotionally invested to walk away from you, it put him into a scenario to where he was too emotionally invested to walk away from you when you weren't giving him that. So he had to take a Madonna whore complex in order to cope with the fact that you weren't giving him the energy that he wanted to get. So he had to see you as the good girl for not giving him that energy, right? He had to see you as a good girl for not giving him that energy, but that doesn't mean that he didn't still desire that. And you can only be in a situation where your needs ain't met but for so long before you're either going to cheat or you're going to leave. And if that man really loved you, there's a good chance he wasn't going to leave. So he just cheated on you. Because didn't you reject him? Didn't you try to check him when he say bitch around you? Didn't you try to, hold back on the pussy sometimes? Weren't you just not having orgasms? Didn't he never give you a vaginal orgasm from penetration? Weren't you acting funny with sucking his dick? Weren't you doing these particular things? Right? Weren't you saying you wanted to wait for marriage? But I ain't never even take you on a date. And then you see the way that you behave with that man and say, okay, listen, when did you give him the best sexual energy that you gave him? Oh, it was after y'all got in a fight. Okay. Or no, it wasn't after you got in a fight. Oh, it's after you fucked up. After you got caught talking to your ex. After you got caught flirting with some other nigga. Oh, it was after you was disrespectful. Those rare instances where you realized you was wrong. That's when you started acting that way, right? Oh, okay, I see. If he had to do all that to get you to act that way and he was invested in you, why wouldn't he keep doing what worked to get his needs met? Why wouldn't he? And yes, you could say, well, you should just leave. You didn't want that nigga to leave. You know you didn't want that. You know you didn't want that. right? Or it could have been, oh, you did those things for me because of your attraction level to me. I'm like, listen, I ain't no super nigga. I'm a decently attractive guy, but I ain't no super nigga. I'm on like 5'9", maybe 190. Yeah, I'm blessed, but it ain't super big, you feel me? It's one of those things where it's like it's my mindset. It's the way I approach a woman, the way I deal with her, the way I talk to her. And when you understand these different things, it's like, listen, how do you think it feels for that man to be in a position where he loved you, but you weren't even treating him like you were attracted to him? How do you think that made him feel? You may have felt like you was being honest. You may have felt like you were just expressing yourself. The way you were expressing yourself was showcasing your lack of attraction and your lack of respect for him. So yeah, if that man's emotionally invested in you, there's probably going to be times where he's going to say some things that's going to hurt your feelings. Because the whole way you're interacting with him is hurting his feelings. And he has to repress that. And you say, oh, well, he should just speak. He should just communicate. That's some bullshit. That's some bullshit. He's already told you what it was. You weren't fucking listening. You weren't listening. And sometimes you got to have these conversations with women. Sometimes you got to have these conversations with people. Like, stimuli is neutral. Stimuli is neutral. That's something I really push, right? Like, one woman could say, well, he cheated on me or whatever it was, or, he said he wanted to have a threesome, but then you down for it with me. Or it could have been like, oh, well, he wanted to deal with another woman, but I'm like, well, you do that for me, right? So you're telling me that because he loved you, you held him to this standard that kept him from doing the things that he enjoyed to do? Were you held back with him sexually because he was emotionally invested in you? Like, do you hear how backwards that is? Like, one thing I push with sexual integration is the idea that your relationship should be based on sexual polarity. Your relationship should be based on a foundation of feeling like the person that you're with is your sexual guilty pleasure. The person that you're with should be somebody that you prefer and that you feel safe enough with to go further than you've ever gone sexually, because that's the person who you're with. These are just some things that it sounds like common sense to me, but it's not common. It's not a common mindset. So there's a lot of different things that I do, but it's really from a perspective of showing people, like, listen, stimuli is neutral, right? A lot of things that are viewed as toxic, like a woman may be like, oh, this guy tried to have sex with me. This guy was talking to me sexual, and I felt like it was disrespectful. I'm like, bitch, wasn't the first thing I ever said to you sexual? Didn't I come to you with that energy from the jump? Didn't I not take you on no dates? Didn't I do this? Didn't I do that? And you like that shit, didn't you? You did. So it's not disrespectful. You're just not attracted to him. Women need to stop conflating feeling disrespected with the fact that they just don't respect and don't desire a man. They got to stop that shit. And it's not that they're going to stop it. I'm going to do what I do regardless. But I'm just saying that if women listen to this and they understand, and they can look at things from a different perspective, right? And if you feel like you do have a capacity, sometimes what you could do is adopt a persona, right? Adopt a persona, adopt another mindset, right? And this is something I did for myself. Because when you heavily socially programmed, sometimes you got to separate yourself from how you view yourself. People don't have a true version of themselves. That's bullshit. Like, people have an idealized version of themselves. People are like onions, right? Like Shrek said, like ogres are like onions. Like, people have layers. People have different sides of themselves. And not everybody has experienced every side of themselves. And sometimes somebody's trying to give you an opportunity to experience as many sides of yourself as possible. And an intimate relationship should be a platform for that. An intimate relationship should be a platform for doing that. So as a woman, you should deal with a man in a way to where you should be the place where he gets to experience the most of his dominant sexual energy with. And his submissive sexual energy. But that's something that's integrated later. A lot of people be trying to jump the gun on that. But what I'm saying is this. It's like you have a whore within you. You have a slut. You have a nasty bitch inside of you. It's in there. She in there. If you got to put yourself in a mind state where you imagine a person who you're highly sexually attracted to, who you have no connection to, think about never getting caught, think about having some type of plausible deniability, and the nasty shit that you would do if you felt like nobody would ever find out. and then create a persona around that mindset that you're in that state of mind. Maybe even get drunk. You ain't got to do it when you're drunk, but just think about that shit. Encapsulate that mindset, encapsulate that version of yourself, right? And then separate that version of yourself from the love and attachment that you have to your man. And when it's time to get nasty, that's the bitch that you bring to the occasion. That's who you bring to it. Her. I'm telling you right now, you do that, your relationship is going to look a lot different. It's going to look a lot different. And men, you gotta get out of this mindset of thinking that not being as sexual, not being as dominant means you respecting your woman. Stop that. Stop coddling that mindset within a woman. What people need to understand is that stimuli is neutral. Sometimes you need to create this mindset, create this persona, right? And after you create that persona, after you get well enough experience with that, you enjoy that, you integrate that into who you are as a person, right? Or if who you are or who you think you are as a person, you don't enjoy that as much as you enjoy that dominant personality that you have, then you can integrate who you are into that dominant persona. Whichever one you like the most, you integrate into the other one. Because what you got to realize is that persona isn't a fake version of you. That's a real version of yourself that you've been repressing for your whole fucking life, right? That's a real version of you. So whichever one, it is, you integrate those two things together. Right? It's not about balancing as far as, okay, this is one side of my life, this is another side of my life, and compartmentalizing. Sometimes you got to compartmentalize and bring that Madonna whore complex, that gentleman gigolo complex into your relationship and separate the different aspects of how you view yourself and how you view each other. And then you integrate those things together in a way that's suitable, right? In a way that's sustainable. And you'd be surprised how much will carry over. Next thing you know, you're dealing with each other with masculine dominance and feminine submissiveness. Next thing you know, you got a certain level of sexual polarity. Next thing you know, you establish that long enough, now you're in a position where you have sexual integration. Now you two are connected and bonded to each other. In a way where you never were, it's going to bring you a lot closer than you were. So this is just my rant. Hey, this is Brodie, I'm out.